Good afternoon, book lovers. Welcome to or welcome back to Nat Cat's Bookish Cafe. Alright, so today I wanted to film the kind of mid-year book freakout tag. I'm hoping to get the majority of it done right now. I am filming this on my lunch break, so if it looks like there's a bit of a time jump at some point, like the lighting completely changes, that's because I started this at noon and then had to finish it when I got off work again. But I am gonna go ahead and answer all of the questions, as well as add a couple extra things that I want to track for myself. So I will go ahead and jump right in. So today is June 16th, so the month is not quite over yet, but I'm gonna go ahead and just give the stats based on where they're standing right now. I have read 56 books so far this year. My goal is to read 80, so I'm definitely on a good track to achieve that goal and possibly even surpass it. So that is going really well. So now that you know how many books I've read, I will go ahead and answer the tag questions, and then I'll give a little bit of additional information towards the end. Alright, so the first question is, of course, what is the best book that you have read so far this year? I have selected 2 books because I couldn't just settle on one of them. The first one is going to be Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is a book I semi-mentioned in my favorite books of all time video, just because it was kind of like an afterthought where I was like, oh, this should definitely be on that list. So I didn't really talk about it on there, so I'll talk about it a little bit here. This is a sci-fi thriller that deals with the multiverse. We follow our character, I believe his name is Jason. Yes, Jason, and he gets kidnapped and wakes up in a world that is similar to his but slightly different, and we follow him as he tries to make his way back to his original version of the world. This is a very high intensity book. It has incredible pacing, in my opinion, and I really enjoyed the writing. It was a writing style that I connected to really quickly. It made this a very easy and understandable read, despite the fact that we are dealing with a concept that I am completely unfamiliar with. So I found that this was a very consumable story, and I feel like it's the kind of story that a lot of people would really enjoy. It has the high action, it has the scientific side of things, it has the human nature side of things, it has a little bit of romance. I mean, it's not like a romance book, but he is trying to get back to his wife and child, and we can definitely feel his love for his family through this, which is a big part of it. I would just, if you haven't read this book yet, I know pretty much anyone who has read it has loved it, so if you haven't gotten to it yet, I highly suggest that you do so. The second book I'm not going to talk about as much because I did talk about it in that favorites video, so I will link that down below if you want to hear more about this book, and that is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I talked a little bit about how much I enjoyed the writing of this book, how much I enjoyed the folklore aspect of it, the wintry vibes, and then most importantly, I really enjoyed the fact that we were following 3 very strong young women as they kind of fight for their right to get the respect that they deserve. So I really love the way that the story handled these women's positions, and the decisions that they made and the outcomes of their decisions. It was just a really well-rounded story. Alright, and I actually wanted to mention a third book, which I forgot because I don't have a physical copy of it, so I'll have the image up here. That is World War Z, and I listened to the audiobook of this. Jess? Oh gosh, we're gonna say Jess from Books and Bow Ties mentioned this book in one of their videos and said that the audiobook was really great, and I was looking for an audiobook to read at that time, so I was like, you know what, might as well, I'll pick it up. I'm not a huge zombie fan, but I have been wanting to get a little bit more into sci-fi, so we'll give it a shot. And it was absolutely stunning. This was a 5-star read for me for sure. It did start out like a little slow, like the first 10%. I was kind of like, you know, I'm not sure how into this I'll be, but the book really takes off. It is very different from the movie. If you've watched the movie, they are nothing alike. I don't even know how they felt they had the right to name the movie World War Z, because they pretty much just took the title, they took the fact that there was zombies, and maybe like 1 or 2 lines from the actual book. Otherwise, no similarities whatsoever. In this story, we are following a man who had written a report about the zombie war, and when he saw the final report, he was like, hey, you took out a lot of the stuff that I put in there. And they're like, yeah, well, you know, we need more the analytical portion of it, the data, and this, and not like the human experience of it. But you're more than welcome to write a book about it. And this book is him writing that book. He's interviewing people from all over the world who were in all different situations and positions during the war. And it is a full cast, so every person that he talks to is narrated by someone else, so it is a full performance. This book made me laugh, it made me cry, it had me at the edge of my seat. It was just a full production. I can definitely see myself listening to this audio multiple times throughout my life. It was just such an incredible experience. So if you want to read this book, I highly suggest that you do the audiobook version. I don't think I would have gotten as much of the emotion or even as much of the thrill of the story if I had just been reading the physical version. Alright, so I am back, so I'm sorry if things are moved around a little or lighting is different or anything, but I'm now off work, so I will go ahead and just jump into the remainder of the tag. So what I left off on is what was the most disappointing read of the year, and so I have 2 books that I'm going to mention for this one. The first one is Land of Big Numbers by Tae Ping Chen. This was a book I listened to as an audiobook. It is a collection of short stories by this author. I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but I don't have a lot of experience with short stories, anthologies, or even really novellas. I don't gravitate to them very often, and the few times that I have read them, I haven't exactly loved them unless they are a collection of short stories that kind of build off of a full series. I find that I have trouble really connecting to the story or getting invested in it because we have so little time with the characters or with that specific world. In this collection, we are just following everyday people who live in China. There is a little bit of a magical realism aspect to it, but not enough to make it I guess I should say interesting. For me, I already have trouble with literary fiction that focuses too much on the mundane, so I struggle with that with this book. There was a couple stories that I did really enjoy, but for the majority of them, I never really got a connection to any of the characters, and so it was really hard for me to care about their everyday life. The second book was a continuation and a duology, so it was book 2, and this one was actually really disappointing because I really enjoyed book 1 quite a lot. So when this book came around and I was, you know, just kind of frustrated with it for the majority of the read, that was pretty disappointing. And that book is Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko. Like I said, I really enjoyed Raybearer, which is book 1. This is a YA African inspired fantasy, and we're following, what's our client's, or not our client's name, you can tell I just got off work. What's our customer's name? What is our character's name? It is Tarisai. So we are following her. She was raised pretty much in isolation with just tutors and occasional contact with her mother, who was only referred to as the lady. And one day her mother sent her to probably like the capital to see if she could become a member of the Prince's Council, with the goal of eventually killing the prince. So I really enjoyed the first story. I liked the setting, I liked the found family, I liked the myth that was brought into it, but in book 2, I felt like there was a really big change in her character, and I think that was supposed to happen. It was supposed to seem kind of like she had some sort of character development, but the way that it happened at the beginning of the book, it was like something happened between book 1 and book 2 that changed her way of thinking, and so it was just very sudden and it wasn't gradual, and it also didn't make a lot of sense. She made a very big decision on behalf of the empire, the kingdom as a whole, and I felt like in the beginning of this book she was doing a lot of avoidance, which was very frustrating, because there was a lot of lives at stake, and she was pushing a lot of people away, and her behavior just didn't quite make sense to me. And I also felt like the story was a bit rushed. I mean, it's relatively short, but there was a lot going on, and what I felt would probably take up the majority of the book was actually only just maybe the last 10% of it. So that event that I thought would be kind of the climactic event was just very underwhelming. So it was a very disappointing end to the series. I would still give it a try, especially because I did love book 1 so much, but I would go into book 2 with lower expectations. So the next question is one I'm not actually going to answer. Let me just, my shirt is like sliding. It's not one I'm really going to answer because it's new releases that you still want to read, and I was scrolling through my Goodreads to kind of look at all the ones that are on my TBR that were released this year, and there was a lot of them. It was actually kind of overwhelming, so I wasn't able to select one, so I'm just gonna leave this one blank, but I will hopefully get to them eventually. There's so many of them. I was like, honestly, my brain was like, if we choose just even 3, you know, it's an impossible task, so I'm just gonna skip right over this one. Right, so the next question is books that are going to be released later in the year that you're really looking forward to. Once again, there's quite a few, not as many. I tend not to look ahead too much when it comes to new releases unless I happen to stumble across it. I don't really actively look for them just because, you know, I have enough books that are already published that I want to read, that just adding on books that are not even out yet is just gonna be too overwhelming. But the first one is by an author that I have already read. That's Hazelwood, and it's Under One Roof. I haven't read I think there's like 2 or 3 novellas out. I don't remember if the 3rd novella is out. I haven't got around to reading those yet, but I did read The Love Hypothesis and absolutely loved it. So I am, of course, looking forward to her next full novel. I think it's going to be kind of similar to The Love Hypothesis. I don't know too much about it, honestly. I just know that I liked her first book, so I'm willing to give her next book a try as well. I actually think I pre-ordered it. I don't often do pre-orders, but I did pre-order that one. So the next book is called Stay Awake by Megan Goldin, I believe. She is the author of The Night Swim. I've also read her other book, The Escape Room, and I've enjoyed both of them. So I did put her newer release that is coming out. I don't have the release dates for any of these. I'll probably figure out that they came out like 2 months after they come out. But yeah, so this one seems to have a slight sci-fi-esque thing going on. I haven't read the synopsis for a while. I kind of read it once, decided yeah, that was something I will want to read, and haven't really looked at it since. It seems to be she kind of wakes up, not really sure how she got there, where she is, and she has a message written on her wrist, I think, that says stay awake. So she's just gonna try and figure out what the heck is going on. I'm kind of wondering if it's gonna be slightly kind of dark matter kind of esque vibes. I'm hoping that is the case, but I am looking forward to listening to the audiobook of that. I've listened to the audiobook of all her other books and have really enjoyed them. The 3rd book is not from an author I've read before. It's honestly a book that I just stumbled across, and the synopsis really grabbed me. Do I remember the synopsis at this point? No, I do not. The book is called Under the Nightfall and is written by Chupeco. I hope I said that name right. So I believe this book follows I think one of them is a vampire hunter, and then there is a couple as well, and they might be vampires, but they have to team up to fight against some sort of evil, and I think he starts to gain interest in the couple, and I believe that it is a polyamorous relationship. So those were a few things that really drew me to it. I think the cover is, you know, very intriguing. So while I don't know much about the story, it is definitely something that I am really looking forward to reading, just based off the vibes that I'm getting from it. Alright, so the next question is a book that was my biggest surprise. The book that I decided to choose for this one was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I have had this book on my TBR for a very long time. In fact, this was the oldest book on my Goodreads TBR for, you know, a couple years, and I finally got to it. I was worried when going into this that I would have kind of missed my opportunity. You know, sometimes you read a YA book and you're reading it and you're like, oh, if I had read this like 5 or so years ago, this would have been my jam, but now I've outgrown it. And I really thought that it would have been the situation with this story, but I've heard just so many great things about it. People seem to really love the story, so I did want to give it a chance, and I really ended up enjoying it, which was a pleasant surprise. So I really enjoyed Maggie's writing style. That was probably what drew me in the most. The characters I don't feel too strongly about yet, if I'm being honest. the thing that I realized with the characters is I really like them as a group, but standing on their own, I still think they're still a little bit weak. I mean, they are all individual, but I very much see them as a group at this point, and I'm hoping that throughout the books they start to stand a little bit more on their own. But it's definitely a great beginning to a series. It definitely caught my interest. I'm very intrigued to see where it goes. I enjoyed the magical aspects of it. So yeah, so I really enjoyed the story and its magical aspects, and will definitely be continuing the series hopefully next month in July to see where it goes from there, because I think there's 4 books in this series. I'm kind of interested to see how she kind of stretches the story into 4 books, because honestly it seems like the kind of story that you could probably solve in 2, but we'll see how it goes, and hopefully I continue to enjoy it. Alright, so the next question is the most beautiful covers that I've either received as a gift or bought. These are books that I bought for myself. My birthday isn't until November, so I tend not to get gifted any books until, you know, November and December. So these are 2 books that I have purchased. The first one is The Last Contista. This, I believe, is a middle grade book. I did purchase the hardback. I tend not to purchase hardbacks too often. I prefer paperback just because I find them more comfortable to read. But this one was just really stunning. Ugh, I can't really, hopefully I showed that okay. I do love blue covers, and this blue and orange is just a beautiful combination. So that is my first one. This is a YA sci-fi, I believe, following a young girl who, I think humans are have escaped Earth. It's probably no longer inhabitable, and she wakes up, and I believe people are forgetting about Earth. There's some sort of organization that's making it that people are forgetting that they were on Earth or something like that, erasing their history, and she's gonna try and make sure that they do remember their history, even if it is not a very good history. So the next one I purchased because TJ Klune had posted on Instagram that this book was being republished by, I believe it's Tor, because he usually publishes through Tor, and therefore was getting a new cover, and I really like this cover, so I went ahead and just bought it to make sure that I have it, and that is The Bones Beneath My Skin. Once again, it is blue. I do love my blue covers. I do not know if this book is available anymore. I just recently purchased it, but I don't know how soon they are taking it down. But yeah, this is just the paperback version. I'm assuming the version that he published either through an indie publishing company or self-published. I'm sure that the new cover will be gorgeous as well, so you can purchase it anyway, but I'm definitely glad that I got this gorgeous original cover to have as part of my collection. Will I spend more money on the new cover? Maybe. We'll see how it looks. So the next question is new favorite author. When claiming someone as a favorite author, I usually want to say that I've read at least 2 books of theirs and really enjoyed it. So following those guidelines, Emily Henry is the only one that I could really say is a new favorite author. I had read Beach Reads last year, and this year have read both People We Meet on Vacation and BookLovers, and have given all 3 books 5 stars, so I could definitely claim her as a new favorite author. I also kind of want to say that I'm going to put like Naomi Novik and Maggie Stiefvater on there just because I really enjoyed their writing and have a feeling that I'll like their future work as well. But I have only read one book from each of those, so I can't say for sure that they're favorite authors, but they're definitely on their way to becoming new favorite authors. Next question is new fictional crush. And for this one, I am bringing BookLovers back. I absolutely loved Charlie in this book during their first interaction in the present day, not when they met 2 years ago. I instantly was attracted to this guy. I mean, he's pretty swoon worthy as far as kind of nerdy white guys go. So I just really thought that this was one of her hottest books yet, and that had a lot to do with Charlie. He seemed just like a really genuine guy, and I enjoyed his flirting techniques. I liked how he was willing to make sacrifices for his family. So he seemed really both job oriented but also family oriented, and I seemed like he was struggling to find a balance, but I definitely respect him for trying to do so. So I would say he's probably the biggest crush of this year. I have to be honest, I don't get like too many fictional crushes. I of course just recently read The Song of Achilles again, so Patroclus continues to have my heart more than probably any man will. He has set the bar too high, and it is why I am single. No, just kidding, there's other reasons. But yes, for this one, I guess I'll say Charlie. So the next question is a book that has made you cry. I made a list of all the books that have made me cry so far this year. The first one was Heartstopper Volume 4. I think this one made a lot of people cry. It dealt with like a heavier subject, especially regarding eating disorders. So, you know, your heart is just going out to our dear Charlie, and it was hard not to just tear up at a few parts as you watch him struggle with that. So that one definitely made me cry a little bit. The next one was Jade Legacy, which I mentioned earlier, and in fact in my favorite books video I mentioned that because it made me cry is one of the reasons it is one of my favorite books, that I do enjoy books that are able to bring that much emotion out in me. So that one definitely made me cry very hard, sobbing. Not a good time, but also a good time. The next one was Full Metal Alchemist. I finished the series this year, so I've read all 27 volumes of that. I can't remember specifically which volume it was that made me cry, probably one of the last 3 or so, just because that's when all the crazy stuff starts happening. Just such an incredible manga. It was my first experience with manga, and it was a really great experience. I'd watched the anime before I read it, and I decided to read that one just because I enjoyed the anime so much. But you know, there are a few heartbreaking moments in that, so I definitely know that that made me cry at some point. Then we also have Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This one made me cry, not as much as I thought it would, and honestly it had to do more with like a side story that was being told rather than like the actual characters, the actual main character's storyline, but it definitely made me shed some tears. It is a book that deals heavily with grief, so that is not surprising at all. I think a lot of people have cried because of that book. And the last one was, of course, The Song of Achilles, which I reread, and that one just... there's nothing you can say about it. It's a Greek tragedy, and it will break your heart multiple times. You kind of stop crying, you're like, okay, I'm okay, and then you read another line and you're like, never mind, I'm not okay anymore. Make it stop. So yeah, so far those are the only books that have made me cry. Hopefully I will read a few more throughout the year that make me feel that strongly about them, because it's always a cathartic experience to just get out all those emotions. All right, and then I believe this is the second to last question for the tag, and that is a book that made you happy. I have selected 2 books, and the first one is Dial A for Aunties. This was a book that I recently read or listened to the audiobook that I really enjoyed. I heard that it was rather funny, and it actually was. I really loved the humor. I really loved the family dynamics. I really loved the romance that was in there. The aunties, the way they interacted with each other, and our character was really entertaining. We are following a girl who accidentally kills a man who tries to sexually assault her during a date, so it was self-defense, but her and her aunties and her mother are trying to cover up the death while still trying to help this really wealthy family get married, because the family business is weddings. So it's just a lot of chaos, it's a lot of drama, and there's also stuff going on at the wedding with like certain thefts of certain things, and everyone is just like, oh my gosh, this is absolute chaos, and drama was addicting. I honestly loved every second of this book. And I would highly recommend it, especially if you're looking for a smile. Even though it involves murder, you kind of deserve to die. And the second book is another Emily Henry book, People We Meet on Vacation. This was just another book that was kind of a chill time, but it also had like a lot of drama going on, so a lot of shenanigans, a lot of humor. I also enjoyed the romance. I thought they were really cute together, so it just had me smiling and feeling good the whole time. We're following Poppy and her friend Alex, not Adam. Poppy and Alex, and they were best friends who used to go on a summer trip every summer since college, and had a falling out a couple years ago. So she is trying to have one more vacation between the two of them in hopes that they can mend things, and things are just going completely wrong here. They're just not having a good time, and it leads to a lot of humor and a lot of drama, and that's always a good time in a story. So that was another book that just made me happy to read. The last question is a list of books that you still need to read by the end of the year. I decided that for this I would go through the books on my 22 books to read in 2022 that I haven't read yet. I would also go through the last 3 rereads that I want to do this year, and then the books that I was recommended to read this year by friends on Instagram. I've honestly not read a single one of those yet, so I'm very behind on those, but I'll go ahead and start with the books that I have left on my 22 books to read in 2022. I think I am a little bit behind because I have read less than half of them, but let me go ahead and start with the ones that I actually own, and then there's a couple that I don't own, but I do want to read this year. So the first one is The Martian by Andy Weir. This is probably a very well-known book, also because it is a movie, and pretty much we have a man who is left behind on Mars because they thought that he had died, and he now needs to find a way to survive until the rescue party gets to him. I heard this has a lot of humor in it, so I'm very much looking forward to reading this and other books by Andy Weir, because I believe, is it called Hail Mary? Is his second book, or his newest book, and I've heard nothing but great things about that, so I'm definitely looking forward to getting into this author. Alright, so hopefully this clip doesn't look too out of place. For some reason, the previous one would not transfer over to my computer, so I am going to go ahead and just list off the other books on this list. I believe I mentioned The Martian is the one that I've mentioned so far. So I will go ahead and list off the remainder, starting with the ones that I physically own. So first we have Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is a non-fiction story. Next we have The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. This is the bind-up. The book is not actually this long. This is the entire trilogy, and this is a fantasy. Next we have Radiance by Grace Draven, and this is a fantasy romance. Next we have Out by Katsuo Karino. This is a Japanese thriller. And lastly we have The Dumb House by Vintage Burnside. I'm not 100% sure about what genre this book is. It might have some thriller aspects to it though. Then for the ones that I don't own yet but want to read, we have actually one that I do own, but it's on my Kindle, which is a Rhapsodic by Laura Thalassis. Next we have Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. Then we have The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. Next we have Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, which is actually one of my favorite movies, so hopefully I enjoy the book as well. Next we have They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. Next is The Passengers by John Mars. And lastly we have Love After the End, which is edited by Joshua Whitehead, and probably has multiple authors because it is a collection of anthologies. Next we have the 3 books that I am planning on rereading. I chose 6 books that I wanted to reread this year so I could read maybe one every other month, and I've already completed 3 of them. So the last 3 are 1984 by George Orwell. I read this in high school and really enjoyed it, so I'd like to give it another reread to see if I enjoyed as much as I did back then. Next we have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This was a book I actually didn't enjoy that much, but it is a book that stuck with me, so I want to give it a second chance now that I have a deeper appreciation for character-driven books and beautiful writing. So I'm hoping I enjoyed a little bit more than I did a few years ago when I first read it. Third one, I did mention that I was looking to reread this in my favorite books video, and that is Into the River I Drowned by TJ Klune. This is the first book I read by him, so I'm definitely looking forward to revisiting it. And for the last category, I have 5 books that were recommended to me by friends on Instagram that I wanted to get to this year. I have not really completed any of them. The first one, We Hunt the Flame, I have read the first 100 pages and hoping to continue that in the next coming month so I can actually check off one of these books finally. The next one is The Sword of Kaigon. I'm sorry I don't have the authors of any of these on the list, so I don't have them right here, and I don't have the time to look them up because I'm just waiting for my phone to just run out of storage. But this is a standalone East Asian inspired fantasy that I've heard a lot of great things about, so I'm definitely looking forward to picking that one up without having to start a long, fantasy series. The next one is Red Rising, which is of course a well-known sci-fi story, a kind of rebellion story that I've heard pretty much only good things about. So I'm definitely looking forward to starting that series, especially since I've been getting more into sci-fi. Next we have what I believe is a YA book. It's called The Inheritance Games. And this is a pretty well-beloved book as far as YA books go, so I'm definitely looking forward to giving it a shot. It seems to be about a girl who needs to achieve some sort of goal to get the inheritance of some man she didn't know. A lot of people say it has Knives Out vibes, and I did relatively enjoy that movie. The last one is one that I'm not even sure if I'm going to get to this year. It is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. If I do get to it, it will probably be towards the end of the year. I am not really currently looking to get into his books right now because there are so many of them and they're so long, but if I do start his books, that is definitely where I will start them, so we'll see if that happens this year. Alright guys, so that is my mid-year freak out book tag, along with a long list of books that I'm still hoping to get to this year. Let me know down below what your favorite book of the year has been so far, and what book you are looking forward to the most to reading, whether it's already been released or it's coming out later this year. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!